I hear the music coming out of your radio. Are you there with another girl instead of me? I hear your laughter and there's something I've got to know. Are you there with another girl instead of me? Oh, I'm standing on your doorstep and I don't know what to do. Should I ring your doorbell or just walk away? My friends all say that you were never true. Hiding in the shadows, I see two silhouettes in back of your window.
All right, that of course is a song by Burt Bacharach and Hal David. Burt Bacharach died last week after a mere 70 years of writing songs. So total flash in the pan there. And we are going to talk about him today with a whole bunch of people that we already know, and we already know will have interesting things to say. Our primary guide, though, our Virgil leading us through the underworld, will be, as usual, Steve Metcalf, founder and director of the Garmany Concert Series at the University of Hartford's Hartt School, now in its 13th season, and, of course, a writer about music, a composer of music. He is music, and he writes the songs, and he's with us now. So I should just say that over many decades, you and I have been together listening to and sometimes singing and playing together and just kind of just geeking out about Burt Bacharach for a really long time. True or false?
True. And do you know that in all those years, I had never noticed, as I did just a moment ago, that the song you played as the intro to the show, Are You There With Another Girl? We got all the way into that song and we had not landed yet on a tonic chord, on the root chord of that tune, which is, I mean, for geeking out, that's I think that's a worthy observation.
Well, it's also a very weird song structurally, right? Is this a verse? Is this a chorus?
Right.
You know, there's no. It doesn't. It just sort of happens, right? It kind of, first of all, lyrically kind of starts in the middle of a situation, and it just kind of goes along. But I'm not really quite sure I could explain structurally how it goes along.
Well, it's almost like somebody made him a bet that he couldn't write a whole tune like that and have a tonic chord in it because there isn't one. I mean, I guess I'm assuming that if we get to the very end of the song, there will be one, but there wasn't in the 45 seconds you just played, which is pretty unusual.
It's unusual, but it's not unusual. I mean, this is a guy.
Not for him.
Yeah, not for him. Exactly. That's where I was guiding you. Here's a guy who I think has this kind of superficial reputation as this guy who just a brill building guy who just pops out these pop hits, one after another, and they're all terrific and singable and hummable, But that kind of doesn't really cover the ground very correctly because these songs are deceptive in their complexity sometimes.
Well, yeah, I mean, deceptive hardly captures it. I mean, it is true that I guess if you go back far enough, he had a few real early brill building songs like Perry Como's, what was it called? Magic Moments, which is a pretty orthodox song. And that Marty Robbins song is pretty much a standard, but it didn't take him long before. And I guess it was really when he started hooking up with Dion, he has said that her versatility and her musicianship, I think, led him in directions that maybe, I won't say he wouldn't have gone, but maybe he got there a lot quicker than he would have otherwise,
Yeah, I also think, and maybe when Paula West gets here, we'll talk a little bit more about this, that it's also Hal David. There's something about that particular collaboration. He was writing, in the 50s and early 60s with other lyricists. I came across a song called Keep Away from Other Girls by Helen Shapiro today that he did with Bob Hilliard, and these, a lot of these songs, they sound like maybe another person in the building could write them. But somehow or other, when he starts with Hal David, they start to get, and I agree with the Dionne Warwick part too. It all starts to get very adventurous, and starts to remind you more of kind of the American songbook.
Well, true, and we might as well sort of deal with that here since you brought it up. You well, Colin, and we've talked about this a million times, that there are those people who insist that the American songbook kind of came to an end when rock and roll arrived. And if there's one antidote to that mistaken belief, and there are many actually, but if there's one above all others, perhaps it's got to be Burt Bacharach. Knowing that we were going to do this, I just ran through the list a couple of days ago. I mean, he has, I would say, at least 30 songs that deserve to be called standards, and I'm not sure there's anybody else who can make that claim, to be honest.
I think
not the Beatles, not Steve, I don't think, and yet because of the range of artists that sing Bacharach stuff, I think he might be the king of post-rock standards.
Right. I mean, there's like a whole subgenre of just Brazilian or samba type adaptations of Bacharach songs. There are, the kind of people like the Barbara Cook kind of people who sing American standards. And I mean, A House Is Not a Home. I think there's like 184 versions of it on this one site that I looked at that keeps track of things like that. But the other thing that struck me today, particularly I was just sort of letting the algorithm of Tidal, my streaming service, kind of just surf me along. They're just, you can really geek out on Bacharach and not know all the songs. There's just a real lot of them. I found one today that popped up called To Wait for Love. The Jackie DeShannon version popped up. I discovered later Jay and the Americans released it for starters. I thought, how do I not know this song? But there's just a lot of them, right?
Well, I think, first of all, to back up, I'm not sure how many just ordinary music listeners, even to this day, are going to light up when you say House Is Not a Home. I mean, musicians do, and jazz musicians especially do. But the songs of Bacharach that were the big hits, Say a Little Prayer and so on, are not necessarily the ones that are of maximum interest to other singers and certainly to jazz people. So I think it shows again the range and the versatility of this man.
Right. Actually, Kat, this is a clip 03. Let's remind people, since Metcalf just pointed out that maybe not everybody lights up over A House Is Not a Home. Clip 03.
A chair is still a chair, even when there's no one sitting there. But a chair is not a house, and a house is not a home when there's no one there to hold you tight and no one there you can kiss goodnight.
This, I think if there's a masterpiece in the bunch, this is the one, right? I mean, there certainly are pop masterpieces that people love, as you say, more than this. But if there's one that people are going to be doing 100 years from now, I think it might be this one.
I have to agree. And of course, you mentioned bridges the other day. A few minutes ago. The bridge to this song is just so overwhelming that every time you hear it, you can't quite believe that he got away with it. But it's a brilliant bridge. And
it's tricky too. You can wrong foot that bridge very easily.
Right. There's a couple of notes that you have to watch out for. But yeah, it's just a tremendous piece of songwriting, and I was wondering, actually listening to that, whether that was a Bacharach arrangement, because it certainly sounds like it is.
Yeah, I don't know. This is the Brooke Benton version, which I think is the first one ever released as on record. But the other thing about Bacharach, is that sometimes, like even his kind of dumb songs, and I'm thinking in particular of What's New Pussycat.
I knew you were gonna say that.
But it's also it could be like an art song almost. It's so weird, and I mean musically so weird that that there's something kind of amazing about it.
I agree, actually, and I have always found it to be a sort of Kurt Weill-ian song in its. I don't know. I mean, it's almost got sort of anarchy built into it, and it's not a song that I guess people cover particularly, but but it's really a very clever song, and it has it has absolutely no antecedents, I think, in terms of these weird little chromatics that make up the chorus of that song. And look, people seem to like it. I mean,
Well, yeah. No, I don't
think its own charm.
I don't think anybody's unfond of it exactly. You do sort of wonder that, like, the two of them are sitting in the room. I feel like they're going, do you think we're done yet? Is the song, have we finished this song? Do we need to do something else with it? No, actually, let's just have it be like this. All right, so we are going to add to our conversation now Paula West, a jazz and cabaret singer, and one of my favorite jazz and cabaret singers, and somebody I was lucky enough to get to know many, many years ago. And first of all, well, maybe what we should do while Paula kind of settles in, is play a cut 04, Kat. Paula's going to talk a little bit about the song I'll Never Fall in Love Again. This is, once again, a Dionne Warwick version, 04.
What do you get when you fall in love? A guy with a pen to thirst your bubble. That's what you get for your trouble. I'll never fall in love again. I'll never fall in love again. What do you get when you kiss a guy?
All right. Unfortunately, we can't play these songs in their entirety because we were incredibly pressed for time. But Paula West, welcome to our conversation.
Hi. Hey, Colin. How you doing?
Good. So you and I met down in Waterford at the O'Neill Symposium there, and I remember a day where the legendary actor Max Showalter came in to talk to us. We were getting a lot of instruction down there at the time, but he said a thing that stuck with me. He said, Dick Rogers used to say, "Don't sing my music, sing Oscar's words." And I was thinking, I was thinking about that with Hal David and Bacharach today. That there's a way. Like that song, all these songs, the words are tremendous and they kind of will carry you along. But what did you want to say about that song?
I'll Never Fall in Love Again.
Yeah.
I just have always loved it. My favorite renditions are with Dionne Warwick, also with Aretha Franklin, among others. It's just a great tune, and his the announcement of his death last week, it shook me up. I had never performed any of the music anymore, but I was getting ready to open a show, which I opened last weekend, and we threw a Burt Bacharach song in, and I threw in I'll Never Fall in Love Again. It was a Valentine themed show, but I did it, and people love to hear it. It's just the collaboration between, and that song was written sort of last minute for the show Promises, because they needed, David Merrick wanted to have a song where people were going to go out and hum, after they left the show. And actually, Burt Bacharach was in the hospital at that time. He was unable to get to a piano. Hal David had already written the lyrics. And when he got out, he said that was the fastest tune he ever composed.
Metcalf, thoughts about the song? I know this is one of the songs where you think the intro is kind of the musical instrumental intro is kind of interesting.
Well, yeah, I did give you a few songs that have instrumental intros, which, first of all, not many pop tunes do these days. I don't mean a vocal verse or that sort of thing, which nobody writes, but a lot of what made, I think, Bacharach's tunes feel kind of grander than the average pop tune was that they had orchestrations that featured big orchestras with a lot of timpani and so on. But they also had these instrumental introductions, as that song does, and as a lot of Dionne's songs do, like Don't Make Me Over and Say a Little Prayer, that they establish themselves with these 4 or 8 bar, occasionally a little bit longer, but not very long, very, very strong musical themed intros, which, interestingly enough, never appear in the song. I mean, that little lick that starts I'll Never Fall in Love Again never again appears in the song, and it just is there to establish the tone and the spirit and the basic feel of the song, which I think is an interesting piece of Bacharach's chemistry there.
Yeah, Kat, let's play 01 here. We'll just play the very beginning of 01. This is You'll Never Get to Heaven. We're just going to play this little lick at the beginning, and then you can fade it. Go ahead.
La 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 Mother told me always to follow the...
So that's an even sung intro
Right.
that's nowhere else in the song, right?
Right, exactly. And, if you just heard that opening instrumental lick, you could say, wow, that's like a nice Joe Beam song or something. It has the musical, I think, heft to be a song in its own right, but it doesn't appear in the proper song once we get into it, except, as you probably remember, at the very end, as a lot of these do. He brings them back and forms a kind of a, I don't know, like a little tone poem or something. But it's not just a rhythmic or chordal lead into the song. It's a little statement in its own right, which is really interesting.
So, Paula West, tell me a little bit more about your relationship to Bacharach's music. What do you hear in it? What is it that you like about it?
Everything just comes together, and it was such a vast catalog of works. And I grew up listening to these numbers, and in films and recordings. And I always love, if you want to wallow in sorrow, just put on Dionne Warwick's greatest hits. if you get dumped or something like that, but. No, it's just wonderful material. And probably another really big favorite of mine is Walk On By.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, I mean, once again, we're talking a little bit about David as well as Bacharach. But, Paula, there are those, A House Is Not a Home has these just moments that kind of stop your heart, with just how much sadness there is. Or I was even just, noticing the line that's going to come up a little bit later in the show. I will never be free. You'll always be a part of me. There's a sense of the imprisonment that you have if you can't. I mean, they really get at that idea of heartbreak. I can't live without this person, and I can't have this person.
Yes, it's just beautiful material.
So, and do you have any sort of, I mean, you're right that there's a way that there's a totality here. There's a way that the song comes together and drives itself along, and the lyrics fit it all so beautifully. Is it musically, for a singer, particularly challenging to do this material? I mean, for example, when you added the song to your set the other day, was that a big jump for you, or did it come pretty easily?
It came pretty easily because I've listened to his music all my life, And, I am definitely going to, I've always wanted to pursue the material. I said, I got to get to that one day. And of course, his passing was a catalyst for that. So it's just so great. And I will definitely be doing some more of his compositions, he and Hal David's compositions in the future. How could you resist? Good music, great music is very flexible. As, you could see by all the other artists that have gotten through his material.
All right, we're going to take a little break here. Thanks so much to Paula West. Great to hear your voice back on our show again. Steve Metcalf is staying with me the entire way. We'll take a break. We're going to come back with Gene Seymour.
When there's a moon above, it is something to see how the fellas follow the girls. They're all in search of love. There isn't a lover who doesn't discover that if it's made in Paris, there is a girl for every boy. Dreams are made in Paris every night.
So one of the people we wanted to talk to is Gene Seymour, writer, professional spectator, pop culture maven, jazz geek, mayor of our annual jazz show, and many other things besides. And Gene, I knew without having to ask that you would have things to say about Burt Bacharach and Hal David. It sounds like what you really want to talk about is a subject also dear to your friend Steve Metcalf's heart, and that is bridges.
Yes. The thing that makes popular song popular, I think, isn't just what's up front, but what gets you, what intervenes. I love intervals anyway of all kinds, and some of the thing that I like about Bacharach's bridges, and I guess, should we define our terms, or did Steve already do that?
I have no idea. I should be honest and say we're taping all this stuff kind of out of sequence. So I have we have either had a very elaborate conversation of bridges or they haven't come up yet. But we should assume that they haven't come up. Okay.
Well, a bridge, of course, is that part of the song in between the first lyric that sort of gets you to the next to the repeat of the theme, I guess. And the thing I always thought was great about Bacharach's bridges in his songs was that you barely noticed that you were on the bridge when you got there, because the themes themselves are so, and a lot of people have said this over the last week or so, they're so elemental and they're so spare that you're almost surprised by how strong and resilient those melodic braces are, and just how they keep you propped up. I mean, really, really strong melodies. And people say, well, aren't melodies easy? No, melodies are the hardest thing to sustain. I mean, if it were easy, we'd have a dozen more Richard Rodgerses and George Gershwins and
Burt Bacharachs.
Yeah.
It is sort of weird because there are some songs, and I think Metcalf will make this point in just a few seconds here. There are some songs where the bridge is almost better, like one less spell to answer. I think might be an example of that. Just kind of an inspired soaring bridge. But one song that you wanted to talk about was "There's Always Something There to Remind Me." Actually, it's "Always Something There to Remind Me" with "theirs" in parentheses. And we're going to play for folks a little bit of the 1963 demo version by Dionne Warwick.
I walk along the city streets you used to walk along with me. With every step I take recalls how much in love we used to be. How can I forget you when there is always something there to remind me? When there is always something there to remind me. I was born to love you, and I will never be free. You'll always be a part of me. Oh, 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 oh. If you should find you miss the sweet and tender love we used to share, just come back to the places where we used to go, and I'll be there. How can I forget you when there is always something there to remind me?
We should say, Gene, that the reason that this is a demo is that this song was originally released by a guy named Lou Johnson, who I think was sort of part of the Brill Building crowd there. Yeah. And actually, if you listen to the Lou Johnson version, the chorus just rips. And one reason it rips is because Cissy Houston, Dionne Warwick's aunt, and Dee Dee Warwick, her sister, are two of the three session singers on that tune.
Right.
And
that's right.
I don't know if you had this experience, but if you work in Hartford, like sooner or later you interviewed Dionne Warwick because she went to the Hartt School and their education program.
That's right.
I've interviewed her twice, and on one of the occasions, I don't know if it's this song, but she told me there was a song that Bacharach and David were going to give away that she wanted, and they were going to give it to somebody else. And she said something like, "Don't make me over, boys," not using exactly those three words. And that particular admonition turned into the song "Don't Make Me Over." So maybe it was always something there to remind me. I don't know.
Well, if it's not true, it should be.
Yeah.
No, but but even when you were playing that, this is almost exactly 60 years ago, and I still get goosebumps, listening to to the way that thing just moves. I mean, it's so great. I mean, I just get psyched by that song, and again, getting back to our original point about the bridge, there isn't like much of what you'd call a bridge or an elaborate bridge to this, but that transition, "I will always love you," and you just kind of jump onto that, and it just carries you to the next rung. And one of the things that I think people don't think about when they think about songwriting of the 60s is the sheer momentum in those songs, because it was the era of AM radio was sort of ruled the world in those days, and you had to get what you had to say and get it done and get it out fast, and being able to work within those corners was what that generation of songwriters, the Brill building songwriters, excelled at. And what I love about this song and many of the others from that era is just how they went about their business, but it stayed with you because it wasn't simple, it wasn't easy, it was deceptive ease is what I always think about when I think about Bacharach's music.
And so that was Gene Seymour. Now I'm back with Steve Metcalf. I'm really we're on a tight clock here today. So I don't know what you want to talk about next, or whether you want to say, do you want to say more about bridges at this point, or did we cover that?
Not necessarily, but I would like to say a word, listening to that and listening to Gene, I'd like to say a word about Dionne Warwick, because, I'm quite sure that the notated manuscript or whatever she was working from in that demo only very loosely suggested, for example, that great key change where she goes up a half step and she kind of climbs her way up the ladder into the next key. I'm sure that she was producing that out of her own head, which I think we have to acknowledge her talent and her, her real collaborativeness with Bacharach and David to create what they created. Because I think without her, they wouldn't have gone those places.
I agree. And there's also a way in which those songs, they need to sound like you're singing very melodically with, as you say, all these really interesting modulations and stuff. But they also have to sound like you're talking. There's something about those songs that she's able to do that, right? When she's really on her game singing one of their songs, she sounds like she's singing and talking at the same time.
I know. And actually, I was just listening. I was driving up from New York today, and on the car, believe it or not, Are You There with Another Girl came on, and she sings, as you know that song, "Are you there with another girl instead of me?" And there are these hesitations between those words, as if she's sobbing and she can't quite get the whole sentence out without taking a couple of breaths in there. And it's really, all hail to Dionne, I think, for bringing life.
On the other hand, and some of these songs are difficult and don't sound all that great if the wrong person does them. But we should also acknowledge that, he wrote "Only Love Can Break a Heart" for Gene Pitney and the Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, right? And that he wrote, we played a Trini Lopez tune coming out of the A. I mean, he wrote in different styles for different singers too. These Bacharach, David, Warwick things are the classics, but he was pretty versatile.
Yeah, I actually talked to Gene Pitney about that years ago, and it is a shame that there weren't more Bacharach Pitney collaborations, because I think Pitney had, in a way that was, as you say, very different from Dionne's, a very what shall I say, sort of emotionally high-pitched voice that worked well with that material. And you mentioned Liberty Valance, which is a great tune, kind of in its own category. But he had a song called "True Love Never Runs Smooth." It's a fantastic song, and it fits his voice and timbre perfectly. And it's a shame they didn't get to work, or that they, for some reason, didn't work more together.
All right. So we also talked today to Illeana Douglas, the official movie star of the Colin McEnroe Show, who appeared in the movie Grace of My Heart, where a Bacharach and Elvis Costello tune is used in a certain way. So we're going to cut over to Illeana right now. And Illeana, tell us a little bit about this song. Where does it come up in the movie, and what's happening at that moment?
This comes up, and remember Denise Waverly, where she is a song writer. She wants to be a singer, but she's in the Carole King mode. She's a little bit ahead of her time, and she's never been allowed to sing her own songs. And so this is finally an opportunity after she's gone through a bad first marriage. She meets a new music producer, and she's basically auditioning her song, which is why it's so vulnerable and so powerful, but it's meant to be her entire life encapsulated into one song for this man. And by the end of the song, that's how good the song is. They fall in love with each other. He not only produces her album, but they get married, and they don't live happily ever after, but they do for a while. But that's how good the song is, the crescendo of the film. These biopics are very challenging, because it's like the first half is amazing and then the second half is a downer. So this has to lift us up and show that my character, Denise Waverly, is finally being given this opportunity to show herself.
So we should say that you perform this song in the movie. The actual singing is done by someone else, but you had the opportunity to meet Burt Bacharach under these circumstances.
Yes,
it
was kind of an interesting thing, because I actually performed the song on camera, but the decision was made. I guess they didn't. That's the producer's choice. They didn't like me singing, which I didn't necessarily agree with. But I was singing. I said, I'm not going to lip sync. I'm going to sing because as we have been saying about Burt Bacharach's music, it's very personal. And so what we did is I sang, I sang it, and then we had Kristen Vigard come in and do the vocals, and then I did some little, overdubs over that. So but yes, sadly, I was not able to perform the song. But I think that why the scene works so well is that I was performing it, and Matt Dillon's reaction to me, I think, is genuine and in the moment,
I will say, but we were just kind of warming up before we became officially on the air taping this thing, and you hit that interval pretty well. There's a very tough jump there in that song.
I think that we were at a time in movie making. This was, 1995, 96. And the decision was made. None of the performers in the film they made, Matt Dillon, all of us. None of us were actually able to sing our songs. Now we've crossed into a realm where you have where people don't have to be the world's greatest singers, but it was an argument I lost, and that's the way it is. And when I do my one woman show, I'll sing it.
Look, if they'll let Helena Bonham Carter sing Sweeney Todd, I see the doors are completely open to do everything.
Yes, exactly.
So we're going to play a little bit of this song right now. This is not the movie version. This, we should say, was the beginning of a collaboration between Elvis Costello and Burt Bacharach. So from the album Painted from Memory, here is God Give Me Strength.
Now I have nothing, so God give me strength, 'cause I'm weak in a way, and if I'm strong, I might still break, and I don't have anything to share. that I won't throw away into the air. That song is sung out. This spell is rung out. She was the light that I'd glance. She took my last chance of happiness. So God give me strength.
There's that tough interval. Even Elvis is pushing that falsetto, and he has a pretty good, pretty big range there. So at some point, you guys are working on this in a studio, I'm assuming, not on set, but but Bacharach shows up. Talk about what that was like.
I wanted to go back, just something just miraculous is that literally it was on February 13th, 1996, that Allison Anders and I were in a studio in the winter in New York City watching Burt Bacharach and Elvis Costello record the song in New York. So that's already incredible. But what I wanted to go back very briefly is that I don't know if people remember that it was Burt Bacharach met Hal David at the Brill Building. And that's how they met, and that's how they formed their collaboration. And that's where many of their early songs were performed. And so when we were doing Grace of My Heart, the concept was, let's get people from the original Brill Building and then match them up with people of today. But so, the decision was made, they matched him up with Elvis Costello. But here is the interesting rub. Costello was in Ireland. And Bacharach was in Los Angeles. And so, we met with him. We talked about the type of song that, we wanted it to be like. I mean, imagine giving Burt Bacharach notes. But anyway, we told him. And then we were privileged enough. They had to send each other cassette tapes back and forth. So a lot of these rehearsal tapes, I have in my stash of them practicing the song. And that's what was so amazing, was that they never met each other until Elvis came over to record. But they had developed such a rapport by that point that's why they continued to work together.
All right, so I have one more question, because you have a dentist,
Yes.
you have a dental appointment, and I don't want that on my conscience. So that you're late for it. I mean, what does Burt Bacharach smell like? I always sort of picture that he must smell really nice. I don't really think that about a lot of people, but you may have no acute memory of this. May not have made a Proustian impression on you.
Here's the thing that I think is so interesting about I was obsessed with him and I knew everything about him, but I think that for people of our age, it just seems like he was always in the background of our life. But I don't know about if he smells good. The biggest surprise was when we went to his house. Two funny things. We went to his house and he has horses. He really got into raising horses and horse racing. So when we were in his office, along with all the Grammys and Oscars, there's all sorts of portraits of racehorses that he's owned over the years. But when he went to record the song, it was winter in New York City, and we were like, we're recording a song just like it's the Brill Building with Elvis Costello. And he comes in and he's wearing the shearling coat, with the sheepskin and the snow tousled in his hair, and we just looked at each other like, does he look like he walked up in an album cover, circa 1969. So now we had heard that he had an eye for the ladies. Nothing like that ever, he was married when we were working with him. But years later, I met and interviewed, when I was working for TCM, I met Angie Dickinson. And she said, she goes, "You worked with my husband, right?" And I said, "You mean Burt Bacharach?" And she goes, "Yeah, he liked you. Did he hit on you?" And I go, "I wish."
I'm sure it was an oversight. It was just an oversight on his part.
I said, sadly, no. But
Illeana Douglas, you're going to be late for your dental appointment.
okay,
you got to go. Thank
just
you
say
so much.
I love you.
I love you too. And yes, the official movie star of the Colin McEnroe Show, Illeana Douglas. And we'll be back.
Since I lost the power to pretend that there could ever be a happy ending, that song is sung out, this bell is rung out. She was
Before we do our final segment here, some thank yous. Let's start with Kat Pastor, our technical producer, and the producer of this episode, Jonathan McPants. This is an episode we had to kind of do a lot of pre-tapes and put it all together really, really fast. So thanks for their patience and their alacrity. And now joining us, yet another member of the Colin McEnroe Show extended family, Noah Baerman, pianist, composer, and educator. His most recent album with Henry Lugo is Alter Ego. And Noah, first of all, welcome to our Burt Bacharach conversation.
Thanks, Colin. Thanks so much for having me.
So we asked people, pick a song, and we'll talk about it. I think what I'm going to do in this instance is play the song that you picked first, and then we can talk a little bit about it. This is I Say a Little Prayer. We're in particular doing the Aretha Franklin version. Here we go. I'm going to just take a guess people know how this song goes. So one little weird thing I want to point out, Noah, just lyrically for a second, is that this song is sort of the narration of a day, of a hypothetical day. It came out, I think, in 1967, right around the same time Glenn Campbell released the song By the Time I Get to Phoenix by our friend Jimmy Webb, which is also kind of the narration of a day. It's kind of a different kind of narration. But I don't know, that was maybe like a thing in 1967. But that's not why you picked this song. Say why you picked this song.
Because it's awesome, but that's not specific enough. No. I think this was first of all the first song that I was ever super aware of Burt Bacharach's participation in. Not the first one I'd heard, but the first one where that was part of my consciousness. And it was part of my consciousness in part because I loved hearing Aretha's version of this song so much that at some point I tried to figure out the song and realized that at that point in my musical development, I was biting off more than I realized. And it's a really interesting and potent example to me of how there are quirky, challenging for musicians, sometimes asymmetrical elements of Burt's music that don't sound wonky if you're just listening. It's not like certain prog rock or other things that are very overtly and gratuitously complicated. It actually is more akin to certain components of modern jazz where someone like Thelonious Monk or Ornette Coleman might come up with something quirky, just that would be quirky to the outside, but it's something where they're just following the trajectory of a musical idea. And then if someone had to write it down, they might notice that there were quirks relative to the symmetries that we are accustomed to in most popular music.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a point that Metcalf will be making today as well. And I've just noticed it today, just specifically geeking out on certain songs, that these are pop hits that you're very used to singing along with on the car radio. And then you don't really think, oh, wow, that doesn't really have a real kind of A, B, C kind of structure. It's like, as you say, he's just kind of following a musical idea.
Well, and in this case, the structure is actually fairly typical, but the time signatures keep shifting. And so, if you weren't trying to dance to it in a methodical way, then maybe you wouldn't even notice that. And I certainly didn't notice it till I started trying to figure it out. And around that same time, I started checking out the Ahmad Jamal instrumental version and realized that maybe I was not the first person to have realized that there was a certain sophistication in this music.
Right. And this, Bacharach, for a guy who was sort of associated with a certain kind of breezy pop, he actually seems to have some real traction in the jazz world. And there's an entire Blue Note album of just various jazz artists from that label, all doing different Bacharach songs. Jazz musicians are attracted to at least some of this material, right?
Yeah, I mean, Stan Getz recorded way back in the 60s, recorded a whole album of Bacharach tunes. There's a great McCoy Tyner album of Bacharach tunes. These are just two examples. But yeah, they not unlike Stevie Wonder, though coming from a different part of the commercial landscape, perhaps. A lot of the songs are using materials that are relevant to the jazz world. And because the melodies are so strong, that's a twofold motivation to dig into the material.
All right, Steve Metcalf, we have exactly 3 minutes left. What should we do with them? What should we do with our final 3 minutes together here?
I think we should talk for 3 minutes about songs by Burt that need to be rediscovered, if that's the right word. He has some songs that were not bombs, but really didn't get as popular as Say a Little Prayer or Alfie or those obvious standards. I mean, I think of a song, for example, called Odds and Ends. Odds and Ends of a Beautiful Love Affair is just a sensational song. And it's a song that I don't think is ever particularly covered or done these days.
Who did the original? Because I don't even know that song.
Dion.
Oh, Dion, okay.
I can't guarantee she was the absolute first, but I think she was. And then there's a song that I think you do know called I Just Don't Know What to Do with Myself. A song that has, special meaning for me. But I just think it needs to be heard and redone by people a lot more. And I hope that's the case. We talked a few about Gene Pitney and, as I think I mentioned, there's a song of Gene's called True Love Never Runs Smooth, which I think is a tremendous song and actually one of Hal's great lyrics that, so far as I know, is not really done. And it wasn't even all that big a hit for Gene, for that matter. So I think, in the way that death seems to often do, I think maybe it's a good moment here with Burt's passing to take a look at the whole catalog and see what we maybe overlooked a little bit the first time around.
I'll just point people also towards two specific albums that don't have so many kind of rarities or recherche songs, but have them done differently. One of them, I believe, is called Here I Am. It's by Ronald Isley. What's significant, though, it's a lot of your favorites, but Bacharach himself produced, arranged, and conducted, and you can really feel it. I mean, the orchestrations are just powerful and terrific, and the way he would really want them to be. And then a more recent thing is by a young singer named Rumer, Rumer, and her album, we're going to end with a little bit of it, is This Girl's in Love with You. It's all Bacharach. She brings a kind of nice magic to it. Anyway, speaking of magic, thanks to Steve Metcalf and everybody else, and let's say goodbye with Rumer.
If not, I'll just die.